The United States of America has succeeded in doing something not even the Wicked Witch could do. We have shaped an economy in which we can no longer afford to stay home and raise the kids. We've created an industry to do that. It's called daycare. Dropping the kids off in the morning has a lot of us a little guilty and a little nervous. We now have a whole new blueprint for women and men. Who, when, where, and whether to marry at all are now more complicated questions than they've ever been for human animals. That's because a career has obliged her to become more assertive, just like the boys in the playground. And he must now become more nurturing, just like the girls in the playground. The good news is that the less we limit ourselves by our sex, the happier will be all the children in all the playgrounds. I'm Phil Donahue.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Alice Carone. Coming next on Channel 5 News Tonight, tomorrow will be a Friday many Dallas workers won't forget. Hundreds will get pink slips. Some law enforcement officials are questioning the early release of prisoners, and Tony Dorsett is thinking twice about some of the things he said yesterday. Stay tuned for Channel 5 News Tonight.
One more.
Despite the pressures of our modern world, family and community remain the moral core of our society, guardians of our values and hopes for the future. Family and community are the co-stars of this great American comeback. For an America of wisdom that honors the family, knowing that as the family goes, so goes our civilization.
So central is the family to our civilization that the one ritual we place above all others is that which creates the family, marriage. And we honor those men and women whose marriages endure.
We'd like to honor these couples that are celebrating over 50 years of married bliss.
The human family evolved because no creature needs more nurturing in the early years than our own children. That close-knit support system has helped us get from the agricultural to the industrial revolution to our modern world of high technology. Now we visit American families whose roots are in each of these phases and who represent growing and disturbing trends that do no less than affect the future of American society. Here is a view of farmers, factory workers, and people tied to modern corporations. Like families in Richardson, Texas, a wealthy suburb north of Dallas, they appear to be living the American dream. Their corporate lifestyle is symbolic of the future, but their values about family are rooted in the past.
Certainly the Dallas area is an excellent location to raise a family. Family life is very good.
There's so many opportunities for children and adults alike, for that matter.
Here is where we can expect the church to be the central focus of family life. First United Methodist Church has a prize-winning choir. The 7,000 people who attend here make up one of the largest congregations in the region. There are 7 ministers, including the Reverend John Ogden.
To be understood.
His office reflects the community's opulence. Reverend Ogden knows this town.
This is a great place to live. The leaders here have great dreams, have worked hard. I think Richardson is a unique community and provides the setting for a nuclear family.
something special today.
The Scotts are one nuclear family in Richardson. They represent the American family that evolved after World War II. Father goes to work, mother stays home and takes care of house and children. That has been the ideal, and it is over, except for a minority of Americans, including the Scotts. In fact, less than 5% of households across the country fit the profile of father working, mother at home, 2 children. The American dream family is an endangered species.
I feel very blessed and very fortunate to be able to stay at home and be a part of creating a home atmosphere. I'm not saying that there's not going to be a time when I would return to the workforce. We've put a priority, Gil and I have, on family at this point in time in our lives.
She has her part of the family that's her responsibility, and I have mine. She stays at home, and we work hard to try to keep it that way. She's always here when the children get home from school.
How does it feel to be an endangered species?
I don't think we are. Frankly, I hope that other people feel the same way we do.
But there is another side to family life in Richardson.
I would love to be able to show my face because I think it would be so much more effective, but my last violent situation occurred very few months ago, and we went through a trial, and he was not imprisoned, and I'm still afraid for my life, and I do not like having to carry a gun. It's easier for those of us who have a little more money, perhaps, to want to try to hide it for the obvious reasons that you don't want to cause problems for your family. You don't want him to have difficulties with his position. And it's caused my son some terrible problems. He dreams all the time of either chasing someone with a gun or someone chasing him, and he dreams a lot about me dying. And I don't know if he will be able to have a family life because of what he saw me suffer.
Since we opened, we've seen in excess of 1,500 families. So I think that in a 3-year period is proof enough that there is a need. I think for the middle-class woman, the upper-middle-class woman, that trying to maintain the corporate image is probably the key factor to keeping her in a violent relationship without reaching out for help.
As in most other wealthy suburban corporate enclaves, the people of Richardson are well educated, successful, upwardly mobile. Even the humidity is reported to be 2 degrees higher than in the next town because of all the backyard swimming pools. But behind the facade, all is not well.
I think that corporate life can be good for some families and bad for others. In our family, for example, it totally has ruined it. I haven't had a meal with my father and mother together for about, what, 5-6 years, something like that.
It's kind of like there's something bigger than your family group that's controlling you and how you live, what neighborhood you live in, what you drive, what time you eat, what kind of vacations you can take or don't take, or what kind of schools your children go to. It's not invisible, and yet because it's this big company and you know what you're working for or what you're supporting your husband to work for, but it just seems to permeate your day-to-day life like an invisible thing.
As executives advance up the corporate ladder, they move where the corporation demands. Many relocate every 2 or 3 years. Corporate family members have become the modern nomads of American life.
The first time we were asked to move, we just said, well, it's good for Dad, and if it's good for Dad, it's good for all of us. It wasn't. It was terrible on one of the children in particular. And so you were punishing children because they moved in order for Daddy to make a living.
Yeah. We've moved around a good major moves a dozen times, and they've always been 2-year stretches. And you just don't belong anywhere. You don't have any roots anywhere. I'm not sure I can survive another move. I'm not saying I won't do it or I won't consider it, but I can't guarantee I'll survive it because I had enough struggle surviving this one.
In earlier days, we lived in big extended families in settled communities. You grew up all of your life with friends and relatives around you, very much more like the way people live in other societies. And the notion that you can take just a man and a woman and their children and their dog Spot and move them across the country, and they can go on operating and get all of the psychological support they need from each other. And when the mother is alone, when the baby is crying, and she's at her wit's end, she has no one to turn to, and you don't expect enormous strains and pressures in that pressure cooker kind of situation. It would be peculiar if we didn't have problems.
The family must adapt, or else the family has to adapt. That's all there is to it.
There isn't an or else, is there?
There is not an or else.
Corporate wives are under strain, but the burden of adapting falls hardest on the children of success. Moving around from wealthy suburb to wealthy suburb makes it difficult, for some impossible, to find their own identity.
In high school, where I'm a counselor, we have probably 600 new students that have moved in. And a special sense of loss comes over these people when they have to move in. The teenagers have to give up everything that's dear to them.
Among strangers in a new community, the young people tend to hide their fears and insecurities behind the defensive armor of material goods and appearance. The task of adjusting is compounded by the burden of presenting a proper image.
Everybody has to feel like you have to kind of put on a show, not necessarily what you really are, and that may reflect in what kind of car you drive or how you look, what kind of clothes you wear. So a lot of the time that takes precedence over whether you're real or not.
People here notice you're outside more than you're inside, and that's really, really sad.
Right now I'm worried about me, and as far as I'm concerned, I want to get out of Dallas because I think there's too much tension here. People are too tense in the way they act around here. As far as I'm concerned, this school in particular is a very plastic school. It's more of a Ken and Barbie type of deal here. I mean, you know.
I like being in a city where there are successful people and where we're proud of what we achieve, because I want my children to be successful too, and I want them to be proud of themselves.
I think the values are kind of out of whack, yes, because it's all money. It's how you look, it's how you dress, it's where you are you at the right place at the right time? It's all money. Nobody cares about what you really are.
Meet Mary Harrison, who remembers how things were in Richardson, Texas more than 70 years ago.
Richardson was a good little town then. Of course, there wasn't anything here much, you know. Just a very small school. And everybody knew everybody. Papa was a great believer that we were a family. And so when it came mealtime, we were supposed to be there no matter what. And if we came in late, then we couldn't have anything to eat till the next meal. This is the school buggy and old Charlie, the horse that was hitched to the buggy. And we had to ride all over that thing to get to school. The first car in Richardson, and it's my sister's friends that are in the car.
What do you think of all the cars in Richardson now, even high school kids are driving?
It makes me have to stay at home, and I am seeing what's happening today, and I don't like it a bit. They are missing out when they think that they are gaining. They are really living.
The family life here has some good points. Strong families. We have some members who have 3, 4 generations, grandmothers, great-grandmothers, sitting next to each other in the congregation. That's the plus factor. Divorce here is very high, and that's a problem that we must deal with as a church. 61% of our congregation have children, both mother and father, from different marriages, which is a rather high percent.
My parents are in the process of getting a divorce, and my father works in Dallas.
I live with my mom and my stepdad, and my dad lives real close by. He lives in Carrollton, and he's remarried too.
I live with my mother and my stepfather in Dallas. I found out this week that it's going to happen, and I've been on edge every day. I was tardy one class, and I just started crying. I mean, it's terrible. I've never seen my father cry, and it's probably the most devastating thing that's ever happened to me in my life. I thought it wouldn't matter because it happens to everybody, but when it happened to me, I
I thought I could handle it, and I can't.
I think part of what the young people were trying to say in the late 60s, early 70s, setting up communes and so on, we call them radicals. Actually, they were reactionaries. They were saying, this isolated family life, it just doesn't work. And IBM should not be able to send us around the country because of the wage incentive. We want to raise our children among family and friends and people. We want a support group. Other societies have it. We don't.
We travel the wrong path sometimes. Think we would all be much happier if only we had more. We confess to you we are caught in a constant struggle for power and position, and all the time wondering what is wrong with our lives, why stress and strain seem to have the upper hand, why serenity seems so difficult to find.
No, I'm not staying here because I won't raise my kids here.
Why?
Because it's too fast. They don't get a chance to be kids. I don't want my kids to have to worry about silly things, what I would term silly things. I want my kids to go have fun, and then when they start growing up, worry about things that matter.
A central myth about the human animal has been that the male is expected to be the sole provider for the family. Many male egos are locked into that myth, perhaps especially among blue-collar workers. But in some parts of our country, the industrial age is in its final stages of decline, and men can no longer provide for their families. For males who are what they do, what happens to the ego when they have nothing to do?
I'm a child psychologist, and I'm very interested in the effects that unemployment has on young children. This is a picture drawn by a 4-year-old child, and as you can see, the picture is drawn without arms. Her earlier pictures would show that the father did indeed have arms. It's her way of understanding and experiencing the fact that her father is helpless.
One place where children see jobless fathers is the Mon Valley near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the home of Big Steel. People in places like the town of Homestead, unlike Richardson, have lived in the same communities and worked in the same plants for generations. Among those who know them best is Homestead's police chief, Chris Kelly.
There's a lot of heritage in this town. There's been a lot of good times for the people in this town, and town's been good to people. Everybody knew everybody. It's like a great big ethnic neighborhood. Each block had Irish, Germans, Italians, black. Everybody got along. We always have. They were very proud about the work. It was spotless at one time. Everything well manicured, painted. They took pride in their jobs. It hurts. It hurts. I know most of the people in the town. It's sad to see them. A guy with 30 years service in the mill, 25 years service, having nothing.
The plant where Mike Murphy works is relocating south and laying off workers. This is his last day on the job.
Real hard thing was to say goodbye to everybody. I know I'm never coming back, and all those people I've worked with, these people were like family. I thought, this isn't going to be that bad. And I shook about 3 people's hands and I started crying. It broke my heart to leave. You know, I'm so used to being there. It just doesn't seem right. I don't know what I'm going to do. My mother worked in this plant back during the war, and my grandfather worked there before that, back before the war. It's kind of tradition that people have worked here for generations now. I used to actually jump out of bed in the morning and run to work. I like to work there. And I've worked there 9.5 years now. I fall 6 months short of getting a pension. It's like I've wasted my 9.5 years. Maybe if I had never started there, I could have been somewhere by now. My insurance is done, my benefits, everything is... I have to start all over now. I don't deserve it. I've never done nothing to harm anybody. They told me last week that if the baby was born tomorrow, that would have been it. No insurance. I'd have had to pay for everything myself. I'm going to try every way I can to keep the family together.
Sure, I'm mad. They're taking his life, and they're saying, they're like closing the door on him and saying, now you do what you can. They have an attitude like they don't care. You know, we're people. We're not things, you know.
It shouldn't be allowed. I don't know what kind of country this is to allow this.
Bob Syme was laid off by the same plant a few months short of a pension. This is his last day of work.
It's pretty hard to take, you know, because after all, I've worked all my life. I started when I was 10 years old, working in the garage, washing tools, down at Swissvale. That's where I'm originally from. And I worked up to the present day. And that's a long time. Oh, my golly. 51 years, I guess you'd say.
Union switching safety, was that a permanent layoff?
Permanent layoff. I don't have any pensions coming to me from the Union Switcher signal. And that kind of hurts a little bit. There I am, stuck with that 9 years and 8 months from my anniversary date that I started in '76. And we're in a matter of shock right now. So I don't know. What can you say? I never thought it would ever come to this. I figured I could give them 10 more years of my life and then wind up with a decent pension. So here I'm 61 years old and I'm out of a job. And then who's gonna hire me?
No hospitalization. No income as far as pension. As he said, we're just glad our home is paid for, that we have no bills. I just feel sorry for the younger fellas.
The steel industry has diversified, bought up oil companies, shopping centers, a lot of real estate, leaving hundreds of thousands of steel workers high and dry. We have to pay the welfare costs. They have to endure the community decline, the decline of their own home values. Now, what kind of deal is that?
Since 1979, at least 11.5 million workers like Bob Syme and Mike Murphy have lost their jobs because of plant shutdowns or relocations. The companies may move elsewhere for cheaper labor, but what about the workers who helped those enterprises make money and are now left behind? Only a few companies help them make the transition to a meaningful future in terms of health care, relocation, and retraining, the kind of assistance that helps them keep up their identity as providers. For those left behind, Chief Kelly has found a direct link between increased unemployment and increased crime.
We're small town, and it was a hard-working town. And there's no work, there's too much idle time. We have 48 bars in 0.5 of a square mile. People tend to go in and drink and try to pass the time away.
Unemployed. I can't find a job. It's 1980. I have my wife and 2 children home with me. We're on relief right now. We're living on poverty. I mix up beans, I mix up hams, I mix the best thing to do. I make 5 days meals out of what I could do. We don't, this pair of pants I have on right now, 2 years, I haven't had another pair of pants.
Everyone I know is unemployed. I mean, I've seen more people getting divorced. I've ended up with high blood pressure from all the stress of this whole situation, from phone calls from bill collectors who don't want to hear your sob story. They just want their money. It's put a lot of strain on it. I felt a real good marriage.
I can't take my children nowhere. What I like to do, like a father would like to do. Fishing with the children, take the daughter out somewhere. I cannot do this.
It's a terrible, terrible feeling. It's like somebody kicked you in the stomach and you just don't know how to, you just don't know where to turn.
A lot of the families are moving out. A lot of them are separating, divorce. We've had some instances of suicide.
Steel mills were phasing out, and I just happened to be one of the guys that phased out with it. Being 34 years old and being married, you can imagine, you know, some of the things that I went through. It was a state of total depression.
I think it's okay to shop at the Goodwill because you can find good bargains.
Dwight Yates' wife, Jennifer, lives in the Mon Valley, not far from Homestead.
I'm the mother of 4 daughters, ages 10, 7, and twins, 4. We've lived in this home for 10 years. I've always been pretty regimented and stable. So when I got married, I thought that that's how my life would be too. With the loss of his job at the mill, that really put a damper on everything. He found work, but it was only a menial job, which left me here with the 4 kids. And so I sought work. That was back in 1981. And I did find work.
It was a reversal of the roles. She was going out to work. I was staying home taking care of the house and the children. It was something that I couldn't accept as a man. After a while, you know, the relationship just fell apart.
Without a man in the house and with a recent robbery, Jennifer took on 2 male roles, provider and protector.
Had to purchase a weapon. It's scary. It's something I've never had in my presence before. However, being a single woman with 4 children, I had to find a way to protect myself, and no, I'm not afraid to use it. There has been times where it got to the point where it's very hard for me to deal with everything, and I suffered from emotional strain. And due to the fact for the past 13, 14 months, I was unable to keep up with the mortgage payments. So they are in the process of trying to foreclose on the mortgage. Monday is the sheriff's sale.
Jennifer Yates represents the new poor in this country. Nearly 10 million female householders raising 10.5 million children on their own. Most women, like Jennifer Yates, do find work, but they're often isolated from the kind of financial, emotional, and child care support that used to come from extended families of close-knit neighborhoods. Absent an extended family, absent a job for Dad, the women are left to pick up the pieces.
It's very upsetting to see this because I grew up here. I lived here all my life. I can remember when the graphite would fall and the sky was lit up at night. Now there's nothing. My husband worked at the mill here for 20 years and was laid off. I was so busy working that I really didn't notice that he was going into a depression, that he was so withdrawn until the day he attempted his suicide, which was the week before Thanksgiving.
After 5 months in a mental hospital, her husband returned home.
My husband sat there just looking at me, and it was just such a strange look. It was so far off, and it was as though he could see through you. He was just looking through you and really not at you. And when I asked him what he was looking at, he just said, "You." He says, "You hurt so bad. You have suffered so much through this." But it didn't matter to me. The only thing that was important was to have him home with us. His suicide was something that had been on his mind for the 5 months he was in the hospital. And he had worked his way up from nothing to the American dream of having 2 children, a wife, 2 cars, a home, acres up in the country, a little bit of money in the bank. The all-American dream he had. But with losing that job, he was going to lose everything, including his children. And he had to give us the only thing possible to give us, to provide us with a place to live. And the only way he could achieve that was to kill himself, because the insurance money would take care of things. And that's what he chose, not knowing what it would do to the rest of us.
Like the earliest communities of human history, farm families depend on each other for mutual support to survive. On the farm, man is not alone. Everybody works, husband, wife, children. And the identity of the family is centered around the group effort. As a result, farm families have maintained continuity for generations. They have kept traditional values in stable communities. When economic crises hit them, everyone's affected.
We're going to lose our farm. It's gone. I mean, we haven't signed the papers yet, but it isn't going to be ours anymore. Probably within the next week and a half.
I always thought that, someday we could do things or go places as a family, and we just never did. We've had 2 trips in 22 years of marriage for vacations. We've had good times with them, but I guess our good times are basically home on the farm working.
My great-grandfather bought this place and built the house. My grandmother and grandfather lived here after he did, and then my parents lived here until we bought it in 1976.
Your mom was born in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Gary and Linda Coleman's daughter, Alida, became distraught over the family tension provoked by the economic crisis.
Alida attempted to commit suicide in November of '84. She and I had always been very close. She worked with me all the time doing chores and baling hay and all that kind of thing. And as I got more and more depressed, I would yell at her and everybody else too. I didn't realize I was doing that at the time, but I was. And she just couldn't deal with that. Plus the fact that it was about that time that the bank really started putting pressure on to liquidate what we had.
By age 12 or 13, many kids who grew up working with their parents on the farm make a lifetime decision to stay there. They believe it's a great way of life, but it's one that may no longer be possible. Joan Blundell is a mental health worker who helps families in northwest Iowa.
At the same time, the parents are saying this is the best way of life. They're also saying, I hope you can get out of here because there's no way you'll survive if you remain. Those kinds of double messages are devastating to young children.
This will be more than likely our last year of farming the land that we own this year because they said they're taking it away, so we have 1 more year left and we have to sell. Can't afford it. Can't get the money to buy things. It's scary, that's all I can say. It scares you every day you wake up. It's a nightmare, a living nightmare.
When I was a younger kid, I always dreamed of being a farmer, just like my dad and my grandpas. I thought, you know, that was going to be really great, the day when I'd have my own farm. But now, I don't have any interest in it at all.
I won't be a farmer, I know that. We just live one day, day by day. We know we're probably going to close down. It hurts because my great-grandfather started it.
Perhaps the most deadly impact of this crisis is that at this point, our children do not have a future.
I'd hope that my kids would be farming. But right now, the standing joke is that you hear about the farmer that was turned in for child abuse. He willed his farm to his son. Back in 1980, when I realized this whole farming thing was not working out the way I had dreamed it to work. Suicide had been one of the things I thought about quite a bit. And when we got our letter from the bank calling our loans, thought it'd be best if we just got out of farming right then. And that was probably the most traumatic thing that I think I've ever put my kids through. I seen my son grow very tense. He became rigid in his chair. He wanted to scream, and nothing would come out. And it had a big effect on him, and it had a big effect on me because it's that sight just haunts me yet today.
Rick Marker separated from his wife, Pat.
it falls apart so slowly that it's really hard to say. You know, you just wake up one day and all those things that you were worried about but would never talk about are happening, you know? They're all here. And you kept thinking tomorrow would be a better day, or next year's going to be a better year.
I finally woke up one morning and I decided things were not getting any better and I was going to have to do something about it. And I moved out and moved into an apartment in Spencer. I guess I'd lost hope because of the farm situation, and I just lost hope for the marriage.
I think he feels a lot of guilt. I think he feels like he failed us.
At first, when I moved out, Pat didn't understand the situation, and I was angry. I was depressed. By moving out, a lot of that tension was eased.
It's really hard for my kids to understand, I think. Not so much the farm crisis, but the part that their dad and I are separated. I don't think they really understand. I don't understand.
The kids are still very emotional about the thing. They don't really want to talk about it, but yet they want to know what's happening.
I worry about all the kids mostly. With Stephanie, she doesn't really want to go off to college, and I think it's because our life is such a mess right now that she has a feeling we need her here to keep us all together. And we're not together anyway, so oh.
We can't assume that life will never be good again. It will never be the same as it was in the 70s. But can it be good again?
For these families in crisis, the safety net is being knit together by those who are, at the same time, falling through the holes. By then, it's often too late. The only help they have to create the safety net is from people like Joan Blundell.
A year ago, people said, nobody will come to a mental health center. People won't talk in support groups. Our support groups were started with 3 farm wives. We now serve about 200 people a week, and there are 1,760 people a month who take part in stress workshops or grief workshops.
Nearly 6 million Americans are still connected to farm life, and more than 200,000 farms are currently in danger of going under. We admire the farm families for keeping their basic values, but many now wonder whether holding on to those values has been worth it. More and more of them are asking for help to get through what their children see as a living nightmare.
The American dream for these farmers is dead for many and is dying for others. Some families still feel that maybe there's some way they can survive. But that dream is weakening, if not dead, everywhere else.
I've had a lot of trouble in trying to release anger, as I don't know who to attack. You know, sure, I could attack my banker, but he's only part of the problem. He was caught up in it just like I was.
I'm getting tired of fighting. Who do you fight? You know, you can't really say you're fighting this person or you're fighting that person. Who am I fighting anymore? I don't know, I'm tired.
Not all American families are in crisis, but far too many are. Nobody who works this hard should have this much trouble. The grim, real-life dramas on this program are evidence that the circle of people in crisis is widening, far beyond the permanent underclass. Of America's gathering storm, it may be said that the legacy established today will inflict its greatest damage in the next century, and our children will be left to wonder where we were when the storm began.
I think suicide is so prevalent here because the majority of us have very successful families all around. The people around us are smart. They've got everything going for them. You've really got competition out there. You can see how hard you're going to have to work to make it in life.
In our interviews with people who've been warning us about the kinds of problems we've featured on this program, many called our attention to a uniquely American phenomenon which they believe has ominous consequences for our future. The problem can be expressed in a word: competition.
I would say that a great majority of children in the United States are raised with the ideal of getting ahead. Get ahead, kid. This is what we teach them. And I think that's helped to make America great, that everybody has felt this ambitiousness. Every country has to be materialistic to a degree or they'd die of starvation. But I believe myself that man can't live by bread alone, that you've got to have things to believe in beyond just getting ahead in a materialistic sense. And I think we've been drifting further and further away from that in the United States.
Most of our parents would be termed very successful attorneys or doctors or CPAs, and so they want us to reach those kind of careers too. There's a lot of pressure to succeed in whatever you do. Some parents put on the pressures to make good grades in school and to succeed as they have, and the peer pressure around here is incredible.
I think that we ought to be in schools not giving grades. I think grades are an abomination. They accentuate competition and they don't prove anything.
I don't think that anybody ought to apologize for pressure. We all live under pressure. Pressure to do well, pressure to go to our jobs, pressure to live. And the pressures are in many ways healthy pressures in the fact that not only do we expect our kids to succeed, we find out that they do succeed.
I believe that this is one of the distortions of the deepest and most pervasive human needs that really threatens our survival. To me, we raise children in such a way that we tell them, in effect, that winning is everything, and therefore, whenever they lose, and everybody must lose, they are to feel terrible about it.
I had a friend who committed suicide at the beginning of this year, and the thing more than anything else, I was mad. I was just mad that he could do that and not even think about anybody else, and it was very selfish.
Last year, a friend of mine and a few other people sitting here at this table committed suicide, and I believe that some people said that, you know, I wish that I could have done this or I wish I could have done that, but I don't feel that there's any way that they could have helped him at the time. I had a good friend commit suicide last year, and she was very successful. She was good in athletics. She got good grades. She was good looking. She had everything going for her. But there are a lot of problems that aren't obvious. There's a lot of pressure from parents. There's a lot of peer pressure, pressure to conform. And all these little problems may seem little, but to the student themselves, they can seem really big, and they all add up.
At least you've got to bring up children with the idea that they're in the world for something beyond their own fulfillment and gratification. I think gratification and fulfillment are both important, but I think you've got to feel a part of something greater, and that if you don't have that feeling, you peter out after a while. There's not enough to keep you going.
When you say greater, do you mean spiritually greater? Are you calling for a religious revival in America?
I think that part of the trouble in America is, and throughout the Western world, that we've undermined religion in the minds and feelings of many people. And furthermore, we have a soul. I like to use the word soul. We have a soul. This is what anthropology forgets, and this is what sociology forgets, and this is what psychology forgets. They petition our human capabilities and defects into little compartments and act as if that is what being human is. Being human is being able to be inspired, being able to get excited about things, being able to create things that don't have necessarily material value. The soul isn't a stylish word anymore. I think it embarrasses people to have you talk about the soul, but I think man has a soul, and that it has to be nurtured with beliefs. And I think we've forgotten how to do this.
This was taken in 1978. We have 4 children. They are 15, 13, 7, and 9 in this picture. Mm-hmm. The first 3 children have succumbed to drug abuse and are in various stages of getting through that and over that.
The Christmas of 1984, I guess, was the worst day. We didn't know where our daughter was. We received a collect call from one son in one county jail, and the call interrupt feature on the phone beeped in, and I said, "Just a minute, Michael, let me see who this is." And it was David calling from another county jail. Collect.
The low point was dealing with the fact that my daughter was involved and was running away from home, and I didn't know where she was and things like that. Lots of fear. Lots of fear and helplessness. I think the helplessness that you feel as a parent when you're going through this is the most devastating emotion.
Well, I think some people, when they are alarmed by the situation that they see around them, want to give up, close their eyes, run away, or retire. Don't want you to get the idea, or anybody to get the idea, that I'm sour on the whole American world. I think we have terrible problems, terrible strains in every aspect of our world, but I am basically optimistic. I would say if we turn around and think about how to raise children to be better citizens and better family people, and if we would, as the American people, use our political power to disarm and to save those trillions of dollars that are now being wasted, worse than wasted, they're making us more insecure every year, then we'd have the money to have marvelous schools as well as ideal daycare and good community resources of all kinds to support family life.
I have a lot of faith, and my faith tells me that my kids are going to come out of this and that they're going to be stronger people because of having gone through this than they would have been, that we are going to be a stronger family having gone through all this.
In this series, we've sought the wisdom of behavioral science and looked at our animal legacy in order to pose 3 questions. Who are we? Why do we act this way? Can we change? Viewers of this series will remember the elephant seal. The males crushed their own offspring in their passionate effort to impregnate the female. The scene made us wince, but it was very telling. Most animals, including us, seek immediate or short-term goals, a selfishness that does not necessarily promote the well-being of the whole species. We're not elephant seals, but we do have some explaining to do. We celebrate male courage, yet most of the people in poverty are women and children. We believe in the family, but we have fashioned a marketplace that is not accommodating to shared parenthood. We put the highest value on education, but our school system is failing. A Blue Ribbon Commission said that. Our children appear to be at most tolerated, not welcomed. We haven't provided enough ways to enhance their self-esteem. More than one expert reminded us during this project that 98% of all species in the fossil record are extinct, gone forever. We ignore this information at our peril. And in the nuclear age, we have the ability to choose the shape of our culture at a time when the wrong choice can have catastrophic consequences. The most magnificent selection of all, the human brain, tells us that we are endowed by our Creator to do much better than we are doing. Getting on with the job is no less than an act of love for our children, who tomorrow will reside in a world shaped by the decisions we make today. I'm Phil Donahue.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Brad Wright, and coming up next on Channel 5 News Tonight, we'll talk to Richardson residents to find out what they think about the program you've just seen, The Human Animal.